When you start your car and notice the engine revving higher than usual, it can be concerning, especially if you're not familiar with how your vehicle normally behaves. This situation is fairly common and in many cases, perfectly normal. However, it can also be a signal that something needs attention. Understanding why RPM, revolutions per minute, increases at startup and how to evaluate it can help you determine whether everything is working as it should or if it's time to take action. RPM refers to how fast your engine's crankshaft is spinning. On startup, particularly in modern vehicles with fuel-injected gasoline engines, the engine often idles at a higher RPM for a short period. This is a deliberate design choice. When the engine is cold, it requires more fuel and faster rotation to operate smoothly and efficiently. Higher RPM helps the engine warm up more quickly, which improves fuel vaporization and reduces wear. The electronic control unit, ECU, manages this process and may also temporarily raise RPMs if it's relearning idle settings after a battery disconnect or software update. In these cases, a startup idle speed between 200 and 2000 RPM is common and usually nothing to worry about. There are many reasons your engine might idle high when first started. In colder weather, for example, the engine naturally requires more effort to overcome internal friction and poor fuel atomization. That's why startup RPM tends to be higher when it's cold outside. Similarly, if your car's battery has recently been replaced or disconnected, the idle control system might reset and take a few drive cycles to normalize. Altitude can also play a role. At higher elevations, engines compensate for thinner air, sometimes increasing RPM slightly at startup. All of these causes are normal and usually resolve on their own. On the other hand, there are some cases where high RPM at startup can point to a developing issue. If the engine idles high for more than 2 minutes, or if the RPM remains above 1000 even after warming up, something might not be right. Common culprits include a dirty or sticking idle air control valve, a vacuum leak due to cracked hoses or loose intake connections, or an aging coolant temperature sensor providing incorrect data to the ECU. Low-quality fuel or aftermarket modifications can also affect idle behavior. While these issues aren't always urgent, they should be monitored. There are also more serious conditions that need prompt attention. If the RPM stays unusually high and is accompanied by a check engine light, rough idle, engine surging, or unusual noises, you should have the vehicle inspected by a professional. A persistently high idle can make the car difficult to control at low speeds, and in automatic vehicles, it might cause the transmission to lurch when shifting into gear. If you're unsure whether your car's behavior is normal, there are a few simple checks you can do yourself. Start by observing how long the RPM stays high. If it drops below 1000 after 1 to 2 minutes, it's likely nothing to worry about. Pop the hood and look for any visibly cracked or disconnected vacuum hoses. Listen for whistling or air-sucking noises, which might indicate a vacuum leak. Think about recent changes. Has the battery been disconnected or replaced? Has the outside temperature dropped recently? If yes, these could explain the temporary high RPM. If the engine is still revving high after several minutes, especially if accompanied by other symptoms, it's time to take it in for a professional diagnosis. You should contact a mechanic if the RPM remains high even after the engine is fully warmed up, if you notice any unusual engine behavior or drivability problems, or if the check engine light comes on. A certified technician can use diagnostic tools to check the idle control system, fuel air mixture, and electronic sensors to pinpoint the issue. To keep your car running smoothly, it's a good idea to maintain your intake system by cleaning the throttle body periodically, use high-quality fuel, and stay up to date with regular maintenance. Understanding the reasons behind engine behavior at startup helps you stay informed and confident behind the wheel. If you're currently dealing with this issue and want more specific help, it would be useful to note your car's make and model, the year, and the approximate outside temperature when the high RPM occurs. With that information, you can better evaluate whether the situation is normal for your vehicle or something that needs a closer look.